done a video for quite a long time now. I've just been busy painting. Yeah, so here's a short video on painting a stream, and I like to start with just rough marks to establish the balance and the composition of the painting. You'll see I'll use a painting trowel there. It's a scraper. I love a palette knife too, as you can see. I just want to make very random marks to establish balance and form and rhythm. Remember, it's all about contrast. Contrast is very important in the beginning, so that you can see where the painting is actually, it's the bones, how could I say, it's the bones of the painting. Because if you don't have a good foundation, then no matter how good a painting is at the end, when you finish all the little finishing touches, the painting still needs to have a good foundation, a good skeleton for it to stand. So there I like to just create rhythm, and I love the way the palette knife just creates random marks, and I'm using the texture as I scrape and move the paint across to get interesting random results with the white still shining through. I often say to myself, I need to just start. When you start, then you've got something to work from. It's almost like a color is a color in relation to the color next to it. Same as in creativity, you just start. And when you start, then you have something to work against, something to work from. So often I've got this little thing in my studio that says, just start. And I don't know where I'm going to start or what I'm going to do, I just start. And then it starts stimulating the creativity. And when I look again, I'm painting and enjoying painting again. So I'm bringing color into it now. And I'm thinking very much about warm greens, warm yellows, and I'm treating the black as cool. So I'm very aware of trying not to mix colors, making mud. I put colors next to colors, and I'm basically just covering all the white areas right now, covering the whole canvas. I'm trying to work every corner and go everywhere that I haven't gone before. Being sensitive to the marks, trying to be aware of what the palette knife is actually doing. And this is the fun part, where it's the blocking stage, where you're just getting a feel of what the painting's going to look like. Keeping it thin. Remember, you got to keep the paint quite thin in the beginning. I wouldn't, even with a palette knife, you actually got to keep the paint very thin. Once I've used the palette knife enough, I like to also bring in a paintbrush. And but my mind still thinks that the paintbrush is a palette knife. So I find myself using the paintbrush exactly the same way as I would use a palette knife, except the difference that the texture that the paintbrush brings in comparison to a palette knife, it's softer, it's more forgiving, but my mind still will treat paintbrush the same way as the palette knife, dabbing, scraping, I find that the palette knife is very deliberate in its mark making. How can I say, sharp edges, clean color, very easy to clean. So I love using a palette knife. Whereas a brush is more, you can create mud with brush work. If you're not aware of your painting, your delivery of paint with a brush. There are so many ways that you can actually create different forms, shapes, lines. And the more you practice with a palette knife, the more you will discover the huge variation of marks that you can create with a palette knife. As you can see there, I'm just softening edges. So the palette knife is clean in this instance, no paint on it. And I'm just smudging edges, being aware of one color meeting with another color. This is taking the painting a little bit further now. A fan brush, okay, this is one of my favorite palette knives, is that one with the sharp edge. I don't know why, I just seem to have a lot more control. And it creates little scrapes and little marks that you wouldn't normally get with a paintbrush. And there I'm mostly just moving paint around now, fiddling with edges. And as I apply new paint, I'm fully aware of the edges that I'm creating, some soft, some hard edges. I absolutely love Impressionism, by the way. I think that Impressionistic paintings are, for me, the best way to paint. It's almost like you're spreading paint, and this edge meets that edge, and you're showing that it's paint. You're not trying to hide the fact that it's a painting. I'm not trying to create a photograph. You often do work from photographic reference, I do sometimes. And whereas also with plein air, it's also very, very exciting to work outdoors. But I never try and create exactly, I'm not a slave to the photograph, as you would say. I rather like to see what the paint will produce, what the temperatures are doing, and creating sharp edges there with the palette knife, as you can see, is working with the form of the trees in the background. There's so many variations of marks that you can actually create with a paintbrush. I mean, with a palette knife. It's good to step back a lot from your canvas and squint your eyes. My vision is not always 100%. I recently acquired a pair of glasses. I mean, I can see perfectly close up. But the moment I step back, things tend to blur with my natural vision. And I think that it's actually helped me. It's been an advantage for me for about 25 years. I haven't been able to see very sharply from a distance. And yeah, it's helped me in the sense of creating big mass areas of cool and warm, and forgetting about detail has been an advantage around my painting. And even when I step back, the paintings look so soft and they work, you know. And since I've got these glasses, there's so much detail. I didn't realize there was so much detail. So what I'm doing there with a fan brush is I'm just softening edges now, but not to over fan. You know, you mustn't pull, you mustn't fluff it. You must just pull once, so that you are aware of the strokes of what the fan brush is actually doing. Same with the palette knife there. You scrape, but it's lightly scraped. Not too heavy on the paint, because you are moving the surface of the paint without trying to disturb anything underneath. You must realize I painted this painting in one session, or I think it was over 2 days. And the paint underneath was still quite wet. So you don't want to disturb the layers underneath. So you need to be quite sensitive to your marks. Like there, I'm painting a dark color over the light, very gently, so that it shows that light coming through those marks. I like doing that. And it's wet on wet. Yeah, it's definitely putting wet paint upon wet paint. And they do talk about fat over lean. I don't really use any what they call thinners or turpentine. I mostly only use fat paint, which would be linseed oil. But I'll use different amounts of linseed oil, not a lot. At the end, I will use very little, so that it becomes slightly more lean on the top. But I think you need to use less linseed oil in the beginning and more at the end. So I've worked with it, and it seems to work. Dries overnight. By the next day, it's normally quite tactile and dry. Yeah, so there we are. There's the finished painting, largely. And thanks for watching. Yeah.